Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the weed head.
Hey, WeedHead. On today's episode of She Blaze, Method Man joins the cannabis industry. Pennsylvania Supreme Court makes a monumental ruling, and we're taking a deep dive into Vermont legalization.
Woo woo. Okay. As always, first of all, I can't wait to get to the Method Man one. You already know.
Ow.
Ow. Yes. But of course, as if that wasn't the high of the week, we do have to jump into the high of the week. And mine is the Culture Campus. I want to shout out one of my besties for making this sweatshirt for me. For those of you guys listening, the Culture Campus was started by one of my best friends, Karen Womack, and her two teen, almost grown daughters during this whole coronavirus pandemic. Everybody had to basically homeschool their kids, and this was an extra project. She's super just talented, as you already know, and she gets it from her mama.
I love Karen.
Yes, and I'm just excited because she made a bunch of teas to really support the movement as we are kind of, continue to push resources are needed. But I also think messages are important as well. And so that is why I was I was like, I gotta buy something. And my shirts came this week. And so you'll see me repping it all day.
Definitely. I can't wait till my shirts get into the mail too.
Yes.
And happy Juneteenth and Father's Day weekend to you guys. There are several different Juneteenth type of celebrations throughout the year. As African Americans, I found that out yesterday when you sent me the podcast learning about our history. And so I definitely wanted to shout out that as my high of the week because we made it. And I mean, your girl, she had a COVID scare, so I almost thought I wasn't going to even make it to this weekend. But I did test negative for COVID because I'm a hypochondriac, so I did get tested. Kind of like STD, HIV test. If you think you got it, just go ahead and get tested. And I am still have a little cough, a little soreness of throat, so I am definitely going to let Dasheeda have a lot of the lead on it because my throat is killing me right now.
Well, we appreciate you, of course, for still finding all the tea and giving us just great hot topics to talk about. And so without further ado, let us, of course, get into these hot topics because a lot of them are really good.
Wait, one last thing. Today is our last episode of season 3. So
yes, that's right.
Yes. And so this is our last episode, but don't fear, you can binge us anytime. And
you need to.
Hello, and everything that we've had in season 1, 2, and 3 still is very relevant to this day. So keep listening, keep watching, and we're actually going to give you guys a great countdown at the end of July. So stay tuned for that. And season 4 is going to be fantastic. And I'm so excited because your girl got some things under folds. Okay.
Yes, and we must remind everyone that if you're interested in being a guest or having your product featured as a high of the week, you want to send an email to sheblaze@theweedhead.com. I wanted to get that out the way up front because we are in planning for season 4. It's going to be our best season yet, but season 3, 20 episodes plus a special episode. Not bad, boo. High five.
Great. High five. We did it. Consistency, which is what I get told all the time. So let's consistently get into these hot topics. Hello.
Yes.
And so our first hot topic is about everybody's daddy, sugar daddy wannabe, rapper, actor, extremely gorgeous, handsome, beautiful black man, Method Man.
Hey.
And he is launching his own cannabis brand that is aimed to spark the conversation on racial injustice.
Go Method.
Yes.
I mean,
And
first of all, I'm sorry. I'm glad you paused because I'm like, anybody who is anybody. I mean, even your age, you got to admit this man, and he is fine still, right? So yes,
stand
everybody
yourself.
that yes, especially our sister Vita. I mean, she when we were younger, oh my God, Meth the Man was her dude. But yeah, I of course have mad respect for him. He's one of the people that, you know, on the same level of, not level in the sense of like a movie star, but being able to cross over like a Will Smith. But his raps were a lot more hardcore than Will Smith's any day. And he definitely was hitting in the hood. He gave us All I Need. So that first collabo with Mary J. and showing us what happens when you put hip hop with R&B swag and you make this combo, like, and it's now like literally how music is done. We got the rapper singing.
Okay.
Okay. And I wanted to take Mr. Man for that. Yes. So, but nah, I'm so happy, and I'm happy because you're about to share. But he's definitely hitting the right tones out the gate, at least on certain things. But you know, I just saw our article for Green Entrepreneur Up with 20 Black and Latinx cannabis men
Pat
leading
yourself on
things.
the back.
And you know, Method Man's not on it because he's too new, but Jay-Z and Wiz Khalifa and Snoop, they're not on it either. And the main reason is not because I don't respect what they're doing, because I do. This industry's hard no matter how you slice it, and they are overcoming the same type of stereotypes, but they're also perpetuating them inadvertently. We already know that hip-hop culture is almost synonymous with cannabis culture, and we are for the culture, but there's so many new faces of cannabis, and I think we are also missing the fact that still it's medicine, and that conversation isn't happening enough, and I think it needs to be amplified. But I am excited about meth. Yes, I'm excited about meth, and I see he's doing some different things, so it's gonna be interesting to watch.
Yes. So tactical, I want to
To
say.
cow.
The
To
cow.
cow.
Okay.
He has a line. To cow coming from the Charlotte out. Like, so
Okay.
you have to just know that. But
I mean,
yes,
I'm
people gonna
like,
be mistaking it.
listen, I was born in the 90s. Okay. I did not grow up in there. I'm a 2000s child.
You are funny.
So, you know, we didn't get the great raps of Method Man like that growing up. He was the actor by the time I was listening.
That's so true. You're right. I mean, you're right. He made that transition already.
Yes.
But I think it's pronounced to cow.
You know better than me, sis. Literally.
Let me know. Let us know in the comments if you think we're
Okay.
wrong.
Okay. And throw a link in the comments to the song because I probably haven't heard it. And his brand is based off of a song he did, the line he did. So you are right. And what is so different about his cannabis brands are that they are premiering in Black-owned dispensaries in California, 4 to be exact. And so that's pretty dope because they have the first dibs on this brand everyone is going to look for. And
Yep.
he is partnering with a California-based grower, Clone Guy Industries, according to the press release. And it's focusing on high health standards aimed at the corona pandemic. So hopefully that means the strains are organic.
Callie, possibly. I think it's really important for us to just, be clear that we have a seed to sale business model in cannabis. And so, there are Black growers and Black cultivators. So my first question is definitely, if I saw meth, to be like, all right, who's really growing your stuff? And are you leveraging the Black and Indigenous population in California? Because you should be. Now, if he's not, he at least is taking a baby step into the areas that we need to see more of, and that includes, leveraging the Black dispensaries and such.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to hear more, to see more. I can't wait to get my to get the ability to like really look at what the flower is going to look like, because it's really now just being introduced. So I'm really excited about that. And as we talk about being able to get into the industry as people of color, indigenous people, we can get into our hot topic number 2,
Yep.
which is about Colorado. And we actually spoke a little bit about it on our episode last week, talking about Colorado. We also gave some statistics from a study done out there. But now we could go a little bit more in depth with their social equity licenses, because this thing is moving fast through their legislation. It is moving
As it should. I mean, it's freaking a long overdue, right?
Hello is definitely.
That's my thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but when things move fast, it is usually because they're trying to make moments, right, happen. So this is like of the moment. We're talking about a lot of this now globally, and this is a perfect example of a market that opened and initially was you can't actually be in the cannabis industry legally if you've had any prior incidents or issues within marijuana in the past. So now they're trying to rectify, but this has been a conversation that I know people like Wanda James, they've been having for a very long time, certainly at least the last 5 years. So I'm glad to see that the governor is finally starting to prioritize it. But I do think that is in the midst of civil unrest, the largest civil rights movement that we've seen in modern times, that he's starting to say, okay, I don't want the finger pointed at me in this. And it makes sense. A lot of states are starting to look at it and look at it again and say, hey, maybe we're wrong here. Maybe you were absolutely wrong here. And you do need to move with a lot more sense of urgency. But I do think it's important that we don't move with a sense of urgency and accept silly crumbs off the table type stuff. We have to make sure we understand what we're asking for when we're asking for equity.
Absolutely. And I know that right now the legislator, if signed, the social equity licenses could participate in state accelerator programs with mentorship, financial incentives for cannabis entrepreneurs. And I really need you to touch on this because you said it last week. And it got my wheels turning. I mean, I am only so old, so I can only know so much about it. But as far as social equity being the new affirmative action, and what you mean by crumbs on the table, because you're right. This social equity program, do I have to go through an accelerator program? I've been in the industry 5, 6 years, 10 years, and I'm a boss within that industry. Why do I have to go through this mentorship program just to get the equity licenses? So I just need you to just clear this up for me because there's a lot of smoke going on right here.
Well, I think that you are right for us to revisit because when I drop something like that, I think it's always important to try to expand and tell people a little bit more about what exactly did I mean. Well, obviously I support equity being built in the cannabis industry and fairness and equality in terms of a proportionate give back into the communities that were really devastated and disproportionately targeted purposely, right? So we know that as the history. So I don't want to mistake that me saying that means that I don't, support it, but I'm starting to dislike the word and the categorization of it because, as a person who was a straight A student that went to the #1 school in the country for college, I got accused a lot of me being just affirmative action. Oh, they want you to play basketball. Well, no, actually, because I actually went to a prep school from New York City and I was still an A student. They want me to just come because I'm smart. And I think that there's that element of me seeing already how social equity is starting to turn into the easier path, on quotes, air quotes, if you can't see me, whereby somehow there are less standards that must be met. And so people feel that is unfair and that is not equality. And I would challenge as such. Maybe, and perhaps this is part of the challenge for a lot of places, is we are not judging or we are making not the requirements, we're not making them fair enough to account for the different circumstances out the gate. So we have to create these sub-programs or separate programs to now create another channel. If Colorado's industry was super accessible to begin with, just as a regular applicant, they wouldn't necessarily need a social equity channel altogether, right? If those are the services, accelerator programs, wraparound programs that were available in general, right, to applicants, and self-selected and recruiting happened within the key communities, we wouldn't have to call it social equity and then it be what you have to do to go through to get that type of license. I think that we are setting up, again, you got to use history and we got to learn from it. We're setting ourselves up for a bit of a fail because our best and our brightest can come through anyway, right? With the right support. And we are forcing ourselves down a framework that's designated and I think being looked upon as if it's a lesser path, and also being abused and capitalized on. So, in San Francisco, we reported last week about how through just a series of 3-4 steps, we essentially got a equity license that's now in a sharecropping model, one in which that High Times owns his store. Okay, so these maneuvers are not protecting the program participants anyway. And it also puts a ceiling. A lot of equity models in other states put a ceiling on the level of business you can have. We don't want that either. We're trying to create generational wealth. And in order to do that, it means that not everybody's trying to enter through the small business door. So when I say that social equity is the new affirmative action, it's about pigeonholing our best and our brightest, people who would excel, without the handicap even more so, but they're excelling with the handicap. We're pigeonholing them as if they are incapable of really building businesses and generational wealth. We just haven't had the means and the resources provided to us. I want to make sure that is clear, that a market that is just creating a lot of new small businesses is not the ecosystem that is set up for us as Black people to survive. It's the ecosystem for us to be able to get bought out, right? And perhaps maybe make millions in that, but $1 billion industry, no, we wouldn't be making billions. We wouldn't be making billions within our community. It would only be a few maneuvers before it is now owned by the same people who control everything else. So if we're really trying to build equity, we need to see it across the ecosystem, across many different ways of entry points. And it does, to me, mean starting with a program from the door that is not so limiting in who can actually participate.
Sister, you just took us to church. Preach, okay? I don't know who needs to hear this, but you needed to hear it today. Yes.
I hope so.
Because you keeping it just realer than real with that twang on it that lets them know that, like, this is what I did go to the #1 school in the country. So I am so glad you broke it down to us. I'm probably going to have you keep breaking it down every other episode until they get it, because these people are not understanding it. And we want there to be equity, yes, but we want it to be sustainable. And like you said, we needed to generate generational wealth. And
yes. Can I say one more thing too? Mm-hmm. Really quickly, I will just add, with that said, I'm also understanding of the fact that we are in a maze that puts these barriers that are immovable in front of us at times, a lot of which being the law. And so being a puzzle maker and solver, I'm always looking at how do I solve the puzzle with the parameters that I'm given. Like, we got to operate how we need to operate. And when are the strategic moments to just blow up the wall, right? Or remove a wall because we have to set a new precedent. And to do those removals, we need partnership across the board. It has to be something that everybody, not just Black, Indigenous, and people of color fighting for it. But truthfully, and the same thing with affirmative action, which a lot of white women didn't get, that was something that was put in place more so for them. At the end of the day, when I look in the cannabis industry, the way that sometimes white men, white C-suite men talk about people of color, they have the same conversations about white women who are in the industry. I won't, again, put all the tea out there, but what I will say is I've had enough experience to see that they're not interested in necessarily bringing those folks into the table. When they say my buddy, they're not talking about a white woman. They're talking about another white man, and on occasion, perhaps another man of color. So we still have issues that are gender related. And then don't get me started on LGBTQ, around disability. Yes, happy Pride, disabilities, those folks who are not abled people, in quotes, in various ways. We have a lot of disparities across the board that need to be addressed and should be. But I think that's what we have to start, and looking at what do we make as the barrier. Everyone's trying to make the money, and they're putting it in Department of Taxation and Revenue to be, overseen. But the reality is that this is a plant that's medicine first, and we need to be looking at the community that it's got to serve, because that will be the best measure of how we move the legacy market to the legal one. Don't get me wrong, this accelerator program is something that every state or every municipality needs, because there are undoubtedly people who are what I call street strategists that will need support dealing within the bureaucracy of the government and licensing. Don't get me wrong on that at all, and that needs to be offered, but it shouldn't be a requirement to qualify as an equity applicant, and we need to be a lot broader in who we are considering harmed by the quote-unquote war on drugs.
Absolutely. And this is such a high note, and I think that next season we definitely have to really take a deep dive into it, because I still got some questions, but we got to keep it moving. So we're going to our hot topic number 3, which is I am really excited to talk about this hot topic. One, because it's on the East Coast, and the East Coast, even when one state moved, the other states are always watching, baby.
You ain't lying.
Okay. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled unanimously policy banning the use of medical marijuana by people who are on probation or people registered medical marijuana patients violates the state law. So what does that mean? That means if you are on probation in the state of Pennsylvania, you can register as a medical marijuana patient and use medical marijuana for whatever reason you are using it for, because sometimes you just don't know. And that this is for my people in the city of brotherly love, because a lot of y'all look like me, y'all talk like us, we're all the same in a certain degree, but you guys have things that may be on your criminal record that you're thinking may prohibit you from being able to use cannabis as medicine, and that is just not true, not anymore.
That's so good to hear, because it's about time, but it also gives me another reason to plug Black and Hispanic folks, Black, Indigenous, and people of color folks to, if you're in a state, go get your medical card, because it's a protectionary measure. It's not a judgment. Now, some places like New York, the medical card is not going to help you get flour. It's not going to help you get a better assortment, but it does protect you should you smell like cannabis. It does protect you in the event that those civil rights are still being violated, because we watched that on camera happen based on the smell, right? Not because we actually saw or found anything. Police officers are essentially beating up a young kid. So this is important to note, because essentially the people who have either gotten out of jail and are on probation or gotten probation only, presumably are going to be qualified for, at the very least, PTSD in Pennsylvania, right? But there's a whole host of other things. Pennsylvania has smartly, from my opinion, opened up the options in terms of what people can qualify for. It's not as closed off other states that have done that, not been successful. And they also don't have a very expensive medical marijuana card, right? It's one that is not $400. I believe it's like a $50 or $75 card. But we have a few people in Philly that are Black owned. You might want to check out Medicinally Jointed, and Desiree is part of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Sharon, like we have a few people in Pennsylvania. The Black Dragon Breakfast Club. These are folks that are going to be able to help you get a card in Pennsylvania, and make sure that if you have to go and check in with probations or parole or whatever, you are actually covered by the law that says, hey, you're not violating anything by having THC in your system.
Absolutely, yes. And DACO, that's a great community programs to join. They will educate you so much, even if you're curious about getting into the industry, or like you said, getting a medical marijuana card. And I love Black Dragon Breakfast.
Yes, I too. Yes, she is awesome.
And their shirts are so cute. They have a shirt. It's already sold out because, you know, I try to buy my little Juneteenth gift for my family.
Me too.
And cannabis is medicine, which is something we always say, always tell people. And, you know, the old women in the South look at me like I'm crazy, but then be like, I used my CBD.
Exactly.
Like, good to know. I'm glad you did, because cannabis is medicine, Grandma. And so, yeah, shout out. And really, most people don't know this, but the 3 residents of a particular county that sued that county for making them violate their probation as medical marijuana patients were 3 white women. And so it might not come to the city of brotherly love that these women sued them. So we had to, you know, get y'all up to date on the current events, honey.
Yes, well, that tells you who's setting the precedents in our country, but also why I said earlier, it's going to take everybody participating here, because those women, those white women going forward and pushing forward, they've changed the precedent that actually is going to impact a lot of Black and Hispanic men in Philadelphia specifically, which is a county that has arrested quite a few as it pertains to marijuana possession just alone. So yeah, take advantage of it. Get your medical marijuana card.
Especially if you protesting, because you know the DEA is watching you. Okay, so on to our next hot topic, number 4, which is still pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm really enjoying what these lawmakers are doing right now. I mean, it could be better, but I'll give you a golf clap. So as we are moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, let's talk about Nevada and what they're doing to kind of fix some of the things that have happened in the past. They are really automatically pardoned over like more than 15,000 people that were convicted of low-level marijuana possessions from January 1986, so before I was even born, to January 2017. And this was introduced last week and is already out to be signed into action. So yes, this is a very soft clap. Because I mean, even though you are automatically pardoned, they did not explain who's part of the pardons, you know, and they also are allowing for people to submit a form to expedite the process so it could hurry up and reflect the status change in their background check. Now, if you don't know, there was a bill last year that was signed by the governor that basically petitioned for the court for expungements, but there were really no resolutions enacted. There was no clear steps. So they kind of just took some task off their list and was like, we just gonna automatically pardon some of these people.
Well, I am giving light claps because I think there is like current theme, and I won't say long so we can get into our like major topic, but there's a current theme of performative acts that are, show me the money type acts, and ones that's just like, dang, you really could have been done that, but you just have been choosing not to. CBS simulcasting BET is one of them. Nancy Pelosi and them with the Kente Cloths is another. And not for nothing, as much drama, because this is, again, has been legal since 2017, as much drama as Nevada has had within their offices that are regulating, you would think that they would have already gone and do this to create a whole different story about cannabis there. But, again, same as like with Colorado, I think there's a lot of unrest happening across the board, and it's making our lawmakers relook at things that they should have already done, and that they probably want to get credit for pushing through right now, but there's a part of me that's saying, like, all you doing is digging yourself out the hole that you created within this industry. And when we get level set, then I can start giving you credit. Right now it's like, oh, thank you, this could have happened for these people 3 years ago. We're in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to just, say I'm thankful and I am grateful. And that is, these are the precedents that we can use in other states to say, hey, they were able to do it. And certainly technology and systems help create that. And we do want to know the demographic breakdown. What does that look like, right? Who are we actually pardoning? But also, the arbitrariness of 1986, I'm a little bit confused by that, because we know that many, many, many people were being arrested prior to that. But 86 certainly gets to be at the height of the war on drugs. And I'm just curious about the fact that, some of how much you're carrying and all of that. These are the things that still I feel we have more re-education. Like we talked about this in earlier episodes. If I'm really part of an organization that's selling, we talking about kilos, pounds, right? We're not talking about ounces, boo. Not at all. And so I do think there's a part of me that is like, they're still really focused on more of that too low a level of possession and no real understanding of even what an ounce is. It's only 28 grams. And so it's like, it sounds like a lot, because we got folks like Method Man who talk about, the ounces, of course, and we've got it more sensationalized, but let's talk about it from the scientific perspective. It's not a lot. So I'm happy. I gave the golf clap. We need more of this. And we need to call more governors to task on doing exactly this.
Right. We need to call them onto task to do more than this. Like you said, we thank you for your little crumbs. We'll take them because, it's been long overdue, but you need to break me off a piece of that wet leg, wing. I need the whole breast. Like, just give me the whole damn 8-piece, okay? Stop giving me little 2 pieces. Because we need more. And we have to stay on there. How that man's knee was on that black man's neck, that's how we need to stay on them. Don't release the pressure. This is the little they can do with the little unrest. Could you imagine if we actually gave them unrest for 365? Come on now, give it to them. So
you also posted something very important, which was how long a lot of the previous things have taken before we saw any results. Don't let the internet fool you into believing that because we have Black Lives Matter written on different streets, that somehow we've made a huge dent. What we've done is we've accepted performative acts in the past in the way of programs, as you said, and supposed reform bills, and they've actually burned us. We need to look under every single hood, under every single nook and cranny for things that naturally belong in this space and to us. So
yes. Well, I can't wait till we do season 4, because with these 6 weeks off, a lot of stuff may happen, and you won't be able to hear all the tea that we got. So while you guys are off on the 6 weeks of She Blaze, binge us so you can hear about what other states have done. And also with our deep dive series, we're giving you guys a glimpse into what legalization looks like into these different states. And that's going to be really important as we push for legalization in these states that just have remixes of the hemp farm bill, truth be told, because cannabis is medicine and you guys should have access. So let's move to our main topic. I'm really excited to get into it. We might run out of time because we love to chat and we geek out on cannabis, but Vermont. Yes, child. I don't know nothing about Vermont, but I learned about their cannabis program just for y'all.
So let's get into this deep dive. It's important also to note that we tell you about all of the states because the truth is, if you really are serious about getting into the cannabis industry in any way, shape, or form, you need to know where there may be opportunities for you to get in a much different way or path than other places.
Absolutely, because in certain places, let's think about these different states that have the social equity program, but just ain't that many diversities around there. Maybe you should go there and diversify their program, okay? So as far as Vermont, they actually passed their legalization July 1st in 2018 for adults 21 and older to legally possess and use cannabis. Now, this was voted on, and then it was enacted in 2018. So people that are over the age of 21 actually can possess up to an ounce of cannabis. And they have the ability to grow their own. They are allowed 2 mature plants, 4 immature plants. They also have an unlimited amount of how much they're allowed to harvest. The thing is that if you're growing or you're harvesting, it must be secure, enclosed, screened up from public view, child. So everybody can know you got that good growing. So yes. And this is very interesting. Kind of like Maine, the law does not currently support the legal sale and taxation of cannabis as well. So I wanted us to get into it, and then we'll be able to predict what their framework will look like, because they've actually tried again to get cannabis taxed, and it's just not working. Vermont's not feeling it. So I think this would be a great discussion, because I'm a fan of grow your own house. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's a definite difference here. In some ways, the another market that we could compare it to has been sort of the DC market, right, where it decriminalized very, very early, and there was what we call a gray market, in that it really wasn't any legal way and any regulated way for people to buy and sell cannabis. But that didn't mean you couldn't give it away, right? And so we started seeing that rise, where people were giving away cannabis with a $40 sock, and the cannabis was the gift with purchase, which is legal technically. So I think that, as we've always shown, as a legacy market tends to be, is very, very creative to keep the legacy market going, because 40 plus years of some of the harshest laws and incarceration rates, and yet it still persists. And that's why so many people want to get aggressive about stomping it out. I think part of what's holding up Vermont is that idea that they want to create a framework that's actually going to be successful against the legal market. But that's where I want them to think different, and I would certainly encourage people who are advocates on the ground there to teach different. Is that not the legal market isn't against the legacy one? It's how do you integrate the legacy market into the legal one that you're creating? How do you transition those people over and their consumer base over, and therefore their tax revenue over? I don't think it is a bad thing, though, that they started with what I call the remix of decriminalization, where they're allowing people to grow without all of these stringent requirements and justifications for it, right? They still suffer from, again, the bro science around what is a lot of cannabis, which is why you're allowed to have up to an ounce. And one day in one of our episodes next season, we need to put the ounce up. We need to show people what an ounce is, because truthfully, an ounce, I could hold it in a hand. It's not going to be like a room full of cannabis. Right. But recognize
kilos of that.
Exactly. Recognize that, there's still that stigma. We need to destigmatize that right away. But they are allowing people to, take care of themselves, essentially. It's like, you need cannabis one way or another, whether it's your chill or your adult use or whether it's your medicine. Here's a way for you to do it without having much government involvement.
Absolutely.
Can't be mad at that.
Okay. Well, here are some of the things that they suggested for the amendments to regulate cannabis. They suggested 14% excise tax on cannabis sales, in addition to a 6% in state tax, and there would be no local tax on it. The tax revenue would be deposited into education fund designated for grants for after-school programs. It also would reduce the size of the Cannabis Control Board, which is responsible for regulating the cannabis market. They also had stipulated 30% of the revenue would go toward substance misuse treatment programs. So again, I guess Vermont people really wasn't feeling what they was trying to do. I mean, 14% is a lot of taxes. 6%, not that much. That's like comparable to alcohol to a certain extent, but 14%, what is wrong with these folks? So,
well, also, I just want to let's break it down, right? Like, it is a lot now compared to some other places where we're talking about 25%. Nevada, certain places it's not as much, right? It's still Vermont. We're also not seeing additional local taxes, so there are some places that have an additional local city tax. New York is certainly one to do that across the board with various goods. But I wanted to just quickly correct you because I think you said exercise tax and it said excise tax. And I think it's so important for me to tell everyone, because a lot of people do that, what that actually is. And it really is, taxes that are levied on the sale of specific goods and services, right? And it's actually an indirect tax that we don't pay as customers, but is imposed on either the supplier or the manufacturer, right? And it's just passed along the supply chain. So this is a tax that really the dispensaries are going to have to worry about. And in the same way, this is sort of the same setup in other states, but they pass it along right to us. So it isn't like we pay it directly, but all that money, all that revenue is ultimately then put into this fund. And in a lot of states, that's a general fund. Here, they're proposing it's going to go specifically into an education fund. And I think the interesting thing about it, after school program, it's sort of like, okay.
They're going to be trimming some stuff?
I don't think it's directly about doing cannabis. It's about having it's about having money for after school programming, and maybe that's important in Vermont. But I think that there's so many other ways, and I guess the businesswoman in me is saying, if I have a chunk of money and I've had it, right, over the course of the last 15 plus years being a businesswoman that I'm intended to manage, how do I diversify the spend to ensure that I am building something more holistically? That's always the case. If you don't build holistically, you really start with a very lopsided foundation. And that to me already sounds important, but sounds very lopsided. It also doesn't sound very directed. So it's like, whose after school fund are you fulfilling? Where specifically do the funds get dispersed? And what organizations specifically? And that's the part where I always got to ask and put a little side eye to,
Listen, the government is supposed to be more open for a reason. They can't make these decisions, whether state or federal. They're really not supposed to make these decisions without us being able to know these things, truth be told. But this has been over the last 2 years. So they're going back to the drawing board. Actually, none of these things have made it to the governor's desk, as we see, and they're still just allowing kind of grow your own, which I think is something I really want to touch on, because we are seeing a lot of states hurry up and legalize, right? And they're hurrying up, rushing to legalize, pushing it just to have their deadlines continuously pushed back, just to have their cannabis completely sold out, and to have these outrageous taxes that are just not helpful for people that are in the startup mode, because that's essentially what cannabis businesses are, startup, no matter how you put it, whichever way you put it, they're in the startup mode and they have these taxes that are like insane. This is a great way to kind of give yourself a cushion to be able to create the framework that is best for your state. And I think because maybe they haven't done their research, or maybe they feel like, well, we just going to try and make revenue off this so quickly, and then you're turn around and now you're actually, most of your stuff in this industry is bankrupt because you rushed to push this framework that did not help the cannabis is medicine. So I want to empower people from states that are about to come online, or people that are really pushing to get legalization in their state, to look at using this model in the beginning, so you actually give your lawmakers cushion to create a framework. There are lawmakers, yes, they're trying to get cannabis legalization, taxation squared away. They're trying to get the amendments, but they're not rushing. Why? Because they've now decriminalized it enough to allow their people to just be happy because they did vote this into law, till they have their time to really put together something that works best for their state and their community.
I think that, you couldn't have said it better. The real rush is those fees, right? I think people see the licensing fees as a real payday, and especially in states where the licensing fee is astronomical. But what they're not doing and realizing is realizing that they're not setting those businesses up for success. The reason why I say that is because just to submit an application for most states, you also have to showcase that you own or are in a lease with an approved location or building. Just that alone, paying that lease alone for years before you're able to get an actual determination as if you have a license, can put people further into the hole. So in this case, I think Vermont is allowing the population of cannabis consumers to, one, become more comfortable, at least consuming not under a regime of militarized law enforcement. That's one. That helps a lot. I don't know if I think that I'm gonna get pulled over or have an issue, coming out of a dispensary, which, by the way, a lot of people feel that in California and Colorado. They feel like, listen, you're a person of color, be careful coming out. I've been told that. Be careful coming out and getting your car, because police are around and they will whoop whoop you, because technically that could be maybe a potential DUI. So it's like, listen, I'm already being targeted, so now I'm good. I'm going to go with my plug and I'm not going to use the market. But in this case, if you've had it decriminalized for some time and people are now more comfortable carrying around at least an ounce, and that means you definitely smell like it, trust, right? Especially if it's good flower, then there will be a lot more interest in actually shopping a market when it becomes legal. I feel they've tried to do too much too quick, and that psychological mindset has not been shifted enough, and as a result, you're not seeing enough people convert. You're not seeing enough people, even when they have freaking ailments that this can help, they're not willing to convert and become a medical marijuana patient, let alone go into a store just 21 and over and think, okay, let me see if I'm not going to be the one that is not targeted. I don't know. I just feel like we've got to be smarter about the mindset. The mindset is important for consumer behavior that, I've learned of nothing else in all these years with these big old retailers. But I appreciate that for Vermont. I think that I wish that Illinois had done something of that nature. In fact, they probably should have just expanded their medical program to take on more licenses through that. But I think people are misinformed. They really believe the payday is in the adult use. And in fact, the payday is in everybody understanding that cannabis is medicine first and always. And then therefore, not only are they willing to be patients and encourage other people to be patients, they're also willing to participate in an adult use market because they know it's not harming them, but it could in fact help them. For real, for real.
Okay, you gotta tell the truth. And I do think there are no states at this point in 11 states of legalization that is perfect. But what you can do is take a piece from here, take a piece from there, and put it together. These states that are just rushing just to do something to make the big payday, y'all are just gonna be bankrupt in the end. I mean, not for nothing, Illinois has pushed its deadline back. Who knew there was going to be a disaster? No one. But ultimately, had you allowed your people that were already in the legacy market to begin with to be able to maybe produce some plants in the back, y'all wouldn't be sold out. Y'all wouldn't be shut down. Everybody wouldn't be like, oh, and I can't get a loan, and I can't do this. So what are we expecting to even happen to the legacy market for people that hold licenses?
Right.
So I need us to think broader, be smarter, and not just accept anything that they give us, right? Use the good parts of everything to make your dream team, okay?
Absolutely. And be an advocate. We are always saying that. And don't be afraid to move to or look to partner with people in other states that have a better situation for you. What I feel like Vermont has opportunity for, just to close out Vermont, is the opportunity for making an impact. They haven't figured out what their law and regulation will look like. So if you are interested in being in the cannabis industry, step up and be a voice within the space, and especially in a place where it's decriminalized, where you can come to the table and say, hey, I know how to grow. These are the things that are really hard to do in New York, because people don't want to say that. They don't want to testify on the books of these different things. And I get that. There's a lot of fear within the legacy market, but that's where Vermont has a very special opportunity for people to come to the table as experts and say, now that we've got a situation where this is decriminalized, here's how I can put my expertise in the hands of our lawmakers to make law that is going to actually help us build a good industry.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for closing us out. I think that was really important. And wow, this season has been so amazing, so informative, and really, hopefully, it's putting batteries in the backs of people that really need to advocate for cannabis legalization, medical use, and not being penalized for using it either. Because I think in the South, it is definitely penalized. You are looked down upon no matter what. And we want you guys to know that there are states all over the country right now that are legalizing it, making it medicinal, and giving their community access to it. Your state deserves it too.
That is so true. That is so true.
I know.
Well, great
right.
season, Ice. Congratulations on our 2020 Communicator Award. I can't wait to see what our fourth season brings. The tea is going to be hot, but I'm guessing
and
so will
it's
our
be
guest.
real.
Yes.
We're going to be keeping it 100,000 always.
Absolutely. Where can folks find us in the interim? Well, I'm the WeedHead, so you can go to the WeedHead.com. You can also find me at Dasheeda Dawson on Twitter and Instagram, and Dasheeda Dawson dash the WeedHead on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, watch She Blaze on Facebook Live Saturday mornings and listen to us anytime on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Iheartradio, and like she says, subscribe to the WeedHead.com to stay up to date on what's blazing in the cannabis industry. So I'm so excited. Love you guys. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Father's Day. Happy Pride Month.
Yes. See you later.
Bye.